Hello, this is Robbie Mitchell here from Ahead in the Cloud Development to give you a quick walkthrough of how to create and test a RESTlet in NetSuite. This video is being recorded in September 2023 on NetSuite version 2023.2. So here's what we're going to cover in this video. I'm going to show you how to write the actual code to create a RESTlet that has get, post, put, and delete entry points performing CRUD operations on sales orders in NetSuite. We'll be doing this using our TypeScript uploading system, which provides API IntelliSense as you type. I'm going to show you how to set up token-based authentication to access your RESTlet, and we'll walk through testing the 4 entry points of the RESTlet using Postman. So what do we need to get started? First, you should have the administrator role in NetSuite. Second, I'm assuming you're already able to upload SuiteScripts to NetSuite. If you're not familiar with this process, please check out some of my other videos where I walk through the setup on both Windows and Mac platforms in both WebStorm and VS Code. That being said, you'll obviously need to have either WebStorm or VS Code installed. Today I'm going to be demoing this on VS Code since it's free. Finally, you need the Postman app. You can get it for free from postman.com if need be. So let's get to it. So this is our starting point. If you've downloaded the project files from the hyperlink on the video, then when you first open the folder, the first thing you'll want to do is run npm install. So that's done. So now I'll quickly show you what my project files look like. Though again, how to set all this up is covered in my other videos, so please watch them if you're not familiar with what I'm showing. This is my HITC upload file. I've got 3 accounts. Today I'm going to be testing in the release preview of one of my development accounts. Here's my TypeScript config file. This is what my gulp file looks like. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit for you actually. Okay, hopefully that's better. And last but not least, this is what my package.json looks like. And of course here I have my SSV2 folder, which contains all my TypeScripts. And this is what we're starting with for our RESTlet today. This is kind of the plain shell of a RESTlet script here, with just a get entry point. So you can see at the top we have the required script type and API version tags. And we'll make this do something more interesting in a minute, but for now we just have it logging something and then returning a success string. So let's upload this to NetSuite and test it as is. I'm going to push my upload command, select my RP account. Okay, here's my NetSuite account. And first let's create our script record for it. Copy my script name. Save this. And we'll deploy it. Set the status to released. Keep the log level on debug, and we'll deploy it for all roles. Now I'm going to leave this here because I'm going to need this URL in a minute, but the next thing we need to do is create our integration record. So for that we'll go to Setup, Integration, Manage Integrations, New. I'm just going to call mine Robbie Test September 2023. Now notice under token-based authentication it's already enabled, but I'm going to uncheck the authorization flow. We're not going to use that. And we're not going to use OAuth 2 either, so I'm going to uncheck that. I'm just going to save this. And make sure not to navigate from this page yet, because this is the only time these credentials are showed here. And the final step here is we need to create our token. Now I mentioned that we're using the administrator role here, so let me show you how we can create a token for the administrator role. On your home page under Settings, you can go to Manage Access Tokens and click New My Access Token. Choose our integration that we just created and click Save. So now we need to enter all this into Postman so we can run our test. In case you haven't used Postman before, I'll quickly explain it. Postman is an integration testing tool that basically simulates the other end of the integration. In other words, you're creating an integration with NetSuite so some other system can read and post data to it, right? Well, here, Postman is that other system. So let's get the URL to our RESTlet and try doing a simple test. So in Postman, we'll do a new request. It defaults to GET. I'm just going to paste in the URL here, and then we need to set up our authorization. The type for token-based authentication is OAuth 1.0. Now we need to fill in these 4 fields from the integration and token we just created. So on my integration, I'll copy the consumer key into that field, and the consumer secret into this field, and the access token ID into this field, and the token secret into this field. Finally, if you scroll all the way down, we need to set the account ID into this field. So I'm going to copy that from VS Code. Okay, now I'm going to save this request. And let's send it. Okay, it says success. And if we check our execution logs in NetSuite, here it is. It did come through successfully. Okay, great. So our connection works. So next we're going to go make our RESTlet do some more interesting things. But before I do, I feel like now is a good time to mention that in the past few years, NetSuite has been working on a new REST Web Services API that actually handles a lot of the basic REST functionality without needing to write any SuiteScripts. It's a great tool, and you can see a demo of how to use it in one of my other YouTube videos here. But so the question is, if that API exists and it's so good, then why do we still need RESTlets? Well, really, it's because that API is static or unchangeable. And so if you need different functionality, you still have to build it yourself. And you can have fun doing it. And the reality is, well, the other API is great. It's often too much or too little. And you'll see what I mean if you compare the requests and responses that we set up here in this demo with the ones in the REST Web Services demo. But anyway, let's get to it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make our get function look up some basic information about a sales order and return it to the user. So for the data in, we're going to expect the other system to send a sales order ID in object format. And then we'll use the search module to look up the data. So for the columns to look up, let's look up the amount, the entity, memo, the location, the subsidiary, sales rep, tran date, tran ID, and let's throw in a custom field as well. Now when you do a lookup, it's always a good idea to log what you get back, so let's do that. And then let's return sales order values stringified. Okay, let's upload and test this. And let's find a sales order to test with. Okay, here's one. So if I just pass in, just in the URL here, I'll just say ampersand sales order ID equals 31003, send that. And here we go, here's our data. And if I set it to JSON format, it'll be pretty here. So there's our amount, customer, memo, location, subsidiary, sales rep, date, number, and custom field value. All right, so far so good. Now for our post entry point, this is going to be our create operation. So what we'll do is we'll take in a customer ID and we'll create a sales order for some line items specified. So let's say export function post data in. And now for our data in, to specify the format that we want to receive, I'm going to use an interface. So I'm going to say interface sales order data. And an interface is really just a way of telling TypeScript what the format of some data is supposed to look like. So for example, what we're going to expect is a customer ID that's a number, a memo that is a string, and some lines. It's going to be an array of objects that have an item, string, quantity, number, and rate number. And then I can use that as my input format for data in. So with that, it's always a good idea to log what comes in. And then we're going to use the record module to create a sales order. Since we're getting a customer ID in, we'll say const sales order equals record.transform from type customer from ID data in.customer ID to type sales order. Then we'll set the memo. And then we'll use a for each loop to go through the lines passed in. So the first thing we always set on a line is the item. So I'll say sales order.set sublist value. Sublist ID is item, field ID is item, value is item line.item, and the line is just the index of the lines array that we're in. Now we're also going to set the quantity and rate, so I'm just going to copy and paste this, change the field ID to quantity and rate. Quantity is line item.quantity and the rate is line item.rate. And then let's just save our sales order. Let's log the sales order ID created. And then let's return the sales order ID in an object. Okay, let's upload and test this. So first to test it, we can basically get rid of the sales order ID parameter, change this to a post, and do a save as. And for the body, let's set it to raw JSON, and then I'll paste in what it should look like. So here's a customer ID, here's my memo, and I'm setting a couple of line items here. So let's go ahead and send this and see what comes out the other end. Okay, it gave me back a sales order ID, so let's take a look. Paste that into my URL. So here it is, customer is Starbucks, and here's the two line item IDs I passed in, quantity 2 and 4, amount 25 and 24.75. And if I check my execution logs, everything went through correctly here. So that is great. All right, now for our post entry point, this is going to be our update operation. So let's say that after a sales order is created, we want to allow the other system to update the line items on it. So for that, we're going to take a similar input to the creation, except instead of a customer ID, we're going to have the sales order ID that we want to update passed in. So we'll have internal ID as a string, and then we'll have the same lines array here, because in our scenario, we're letting the user overwrite whatever lines are on the sales order, kind of like a total update to the lines there. So our put function is going to be similar to post. Data in is going to use iSalesOrderUpdate data. First again, let's log our data in. And then this time we'll load the sales order. And we're going to use the same exact loop to go through the lines. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. Then again, we just have to save the sales order. Let's log that we've updated it. And then let's return success. All right, so let's upload and test this. Again, let's change it to a put and do a save as. And then again, the difference in the body, there's no more memo. And instead of customer ID, let's take the sales order ID that we created a minute ago. It's internal ID. We said it's a string, so let's do it as a string. And let's send that in. Actually, I should change this data so that we can visually tell that it's worked. So let's change our quantities here to 5 and 6, and the rates to maybe 30 and 31. I'll send that. Okay, it says it worked, so now if we go back and refresh our sales order, we can see our line item quantities changed to 5 and 6, and the rates are now 30 and 31. So that is working great. So finally, let's do our delete entry point. And I'm going to tell you this is going to be a little bit different because in JavaScript and TypeScript, the word delete is a reserved keyword, so we can't name our function delete. So I'm going to name it deletefunc. And for the sales order we want to delete, we'll just take in a sales order ID, similar to our get function. And in the function, let's log what comes in. Then we'll use the record.delete method to delete our sales order. And then we'll return success. And now, since we named our function deletefunc, the way we kind of get it out as delete is we say export deletefunc as delete. Now let's upload and test this. Okay, so again in Postman, we'll change our request to delete, do a save as. And the data that we're going to send is just the sales order ID. And I'm going to tell you that something weird is about to happen. This isn't going to work, and I'm going to show you and explain why. So if I send this, I get back an error saying missing ID, and if I check my execution logs, I can see that the data came through empty here. So why is that? Well, to be honest, I'm not totally sure, but I think it has something to do with the headers, and I think the delete entry point wants to act more like the get entry point, where it takes a URL parameter instead of a body parameter. So to solve that, we can put it in the URL, or we can use this params tab and just add it here, sales order ID. And if I do this, it'll work. But in theory, I should now be able to say body is none because we're sending it as a URL parameter, right? Well, if I do that, we get back a strange, unexpected error here. So what I found is that it does want it as a URL parameter, but it also wants you to send something in your body here. So even if we just send an empty body like this, that will finally work fine. Now, if you know more about why this is happening and you want to clarify it in a comment, feel free. That would be appreciated. But for now, this does work great. Our sales order has been deleted. And that concludes our demo of RESTlets. Please get in touch if you have any questions or feedback. Otherwise, we'll see you at SuiteWorld. Thank you for watching.